Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where your host is dealing with some feelings of melancholy this morning. It was the first day of school here in Minot, and I'll tell you, it was my daughter she's a senior this year, so it's her first day of school. That was tough. My son's a fourth grader this year, and for the first time, didn't want dad walking him all the way into the classroom, just wanted me to drop him off at the door. He'd take it from there. My oldest daughter's getting married next month, and I got to tell you, it feels like my kids don't need their dad anymore, and I'm struggling a little bit.
So Rob, yesterday was Bismarck's first day of school, and I also experienced the first time where my child said, "Nah, drop me off at the door. That's good enough." Because at his school, they go up on the second floor when they're, quote, big kids, and the third, fourth, and fifth graders are up on the second floor. So he didn't need anything to do with me. He also gave me a talk on the walk to school about what kind of affection we could show him upon dropping him off as well. So,
yeah, the hand holding, it don't need it anymore. It's just hard, man. Anyway. Before I start crying, I'm going to introduce our guest, North Dakota Insurance Commissioner John Godfread. And we're going to have him on about a number of topics, including his department, the insurance department, taking on a new role. It was previously separate. The North Dakota Securities Department was previously separate from the insurance department. Now they're all under the same umbrella. That was a big change. It was Senate Bill 2214 during the legislative session. Big change. John, how are you? And do you want to begin by sharing any sad dad stories?
Well, I mean, it's so good to see you guys and glad to be back. The first day of school yesterday, I have a first day middle schooler, which involved, he had a full day from 8 a.m. to about 8 p.m. because he had soccer and football right after school. And so it was a little tough because you dropped him off at school. He walked in, you you got the drop off line, you got to keep it moving. And then I didn't really hear from him again until about 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And it's like, dude, how's your day? Like, I'm dying here. What's going on? Did you make it through? Did you find your classes? And he's pretty self-sufficient, had a little trouble with his locker combination, but that's okay. The younger two, they go to school right across the street from us, and so that's easy. But man, they're growing up fast. I still remember dropping off my first one at kindergarten, and it's all of a sudden we got a middle schooler.
Did you guys ever had that thing where, like, halfway through the school year, you just randomly forgot your locker combination? I swear that happened to me like every year. Like, I just show up this
Christmas break, right? I mean, Christmas break, all of a sudden it's like, oh God, I'm in school.
Back and now I'm staring at my lock like, wait, how do I get into this thing?
Yeah.
I'm still stressed out about being able to open my locker on the first day of seventh grade when,
I still remember I lost a book in seventh grade halfway through, and I spent the rest of the year stressing out about what am I going to do at the end of the year when I got to turn in this literature book. And come to find out, my literature teacher didn't care. And he's like, hey, you got a book? And so I grabbed an extra one off the shelf, didn't tell anybody, and it was stressing. Okay, I'm going to tell my dad about this. How am I going to do this? It'll be like an $800 book. I worked it up in my mind. And I went and turned in the extra one thinking like, well, just don't, he checked the number. He's like, yeah, great. You turned in a book. I don't care. Keep moving. And it was nothing. I spent 6 months worrying about this thing for nothing.
Oh, the anxiety of childhood.
Yep.
All right. Tell us about moving this. Let's actually get serious about this interview now. Tell us about moving the securities department into the insurance department. Why was this a good move?
Well, I think inherently we do a lot of the same things, right? The primary mission of the insurance department is consumer protection. And the primary mission of a state securities department is investor protection, right? So at the fundamental level, our main focus is working with consumers and making sure that they're protected in the products that they're purchasing. This isn't an uncommon thing. There's 16 states that have done this. We're the most recent. South Dakota went through it, I believe in 2019. They did the transfer in of securities underneath their insurance division. There's a whole host of synergies there. You're seeing more and more in the world of financial products. These pieces are blending together. You think of your financial advisor, you go to your financial advisor, and if they're worth their weight in gold, they're probably going to also offer you some annuities or some life insurance, and so everything is kind of getting blended together. And I think there's really some efficiencies to be gained in the marketplace of having one department for those folks to go to. So whether you're solely working in the brokerage firm, or if you're blended in selling those life products and annuity products, or if you're solely an insurance division or insurance salesman, there is some efficiencies there to be gained where we can get some licensure and registration across our division. That should make it easier for those who are in the industry. And then also looking at consumers, having a single point of contact, right? So knowing who to call and who to reach out to should make it easier. And, Rob, the securities department in North Dakota was 10 FTEs. It is a pretty small division. We're about 40 people strong in financial regulatory world. We're able to give them some redundancies and look at, okay, how do you do financial investigations, examinations? We have a fraud division. They didn't have a fraud division. We have some additional legal help that can work in these cases and kind of when there's some excess time or when somebody has some room on their plate, they can look into the securities world as well. It really just makes a heck of a lot of sense. And we've really seen as the transfer over in since July 1st, again, we've transferred over a number of their employees. They came over and trying to put the kind of the insurance department stamp on that process has really been good and improving some of those processes. One thing I'm really proud of what we've done at the insurance department, we've modernized a lot of our processes and really gotten away from paper and gone to the cloud and really made things efficient. I'm excited to do that with the securities team. There's some big rooms or big steps to gain there. And so again, I think at the end of the day, it just makes a lot of sense. This isn't the first time this has come up in the state. It came up before I was commissioner. My first year in 2017, when I first got sworn in, Senator Casper introduced a bill right away to make this merger happen. That turned into a study. That study kind of died on the vine, but so this has been a pretty consistent discussion throughout my time here. It was nice to get the governor supported and the legislature supported and move along our way.
John, I think your description of this makes perfect sense, but I don't remember it being exactly a friendly merger from the securities point of view. There was some apprehension. You guys did have some weird, sort of strange conflicts over office space leading up to this. Do you feel like you've sort of gotten past the conflict between your office and the former security commissioner? I think that she's no longer there, but do you think that led to the importance of this merger?
I think that led to probably some of the apprehension, right, with some of the staff that are still there. But again, I think we've done a good job of kind of exposing and bringing our culture to them. I think we've got a very good culture in the insurance department. We are. I've come in here initially and just said, listen, my job is to get you the resources you all need to do the work that you got to do. You're the experts. I get to take credit for the work that you get to do. And that's a real big honor for me. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to rely on what you all do. And so, kind of giving some of that autonomy and allowing them to do the work that they need to do, I think is encouraging. What we found is that a lot of their work prior to July 1st was very, very siloed. So there was no cross communication. Teams didn't know what other teams were doing. And that's a problem, right? Because and when you're that small of a team and you don't know what other people are doing, the knowledge was housed near the top. And so nobody knew what everybody was doing. And that leads to probably some inefficiencies and potentially some issues. So yeah, I mean, I think there were certainly some issues over office space. I'll stand by the fact that our department was extremely transparent in those discussions. It was on the 5th floor, right? We've been trying to get rid of offsite leases the entire time I've been here. When I came over, we had 3 offsite leases for a team of 30. That made no sense, right? I mean, we had 3 different buildings. Right now, I've got everybody on the 5th floor. So that saves the state money. It makes us more efficient. It brings everybody together. And talking with the legislature during some of those processes, like John, how do you want to utilize your space? Like, well, I'd love to get the entirety of the 5th floor. Well, that meant the securities team had to move, and that upset at that point the then securities commissioner, and felt that was a personal attack. And it's like, I'm just trying to get rid of an offsite lease that I've got way too much space over in the Ag Coalition building up north that we don't need, and that's a state dollar drain. And so I think a lot of that has been put behind us. I'm excited about what we're doing going forward. We've got a great team that has come over from the securities team. Cody Schmidt, who's our chief securities regulator, has been with the department for a number of years and came from the industry prior to that. And he brings a great mindset to this. Again, you can make these things overly complex, and you can make this stuff a lot more difficult than it needs to be. And at the end of the day, it's about protecting North Dakotans and helping North Dakotans, and keeping that mindset going forward is really, really important.
I'd get some flack from listeners if I didn't ask about this, but the situation with Epic companies captured a lot of people's attention, rightfully so. I mean, it was it touches a lot of communities in our state, touches a lot of businesses, banks, everything else. I know securities is looking into that. What, if anything, can you tell us about that process right now?
Yeah, we're working through that process. I think one of the things that I've found in my analysis of the work in the securities team, prior to and now coming underneath us, is a lot of it was reactive, right? There wasn't, we take a stance in the insurance department. We're trying to be proactive as best we can. And the way the securities team, I think, worked in the past was they worked by cease and desist. So after the damages happened, so after the money's out the door, after people have been harmed, well, I'll now issue Chad, for example. I'll use Chad as an example. A cease and desist and say, "Thou shalt not do this anymore." Well, Chad's likely out of money. Chad's likely gone bankrupt. There's no more money to get. I can't recover anything to help make those citizens whole. In the insurance world, we take complaints, we investigate them early and often, and we take kind of preemptive action on some of these pieces and try to stop the bleed before it gets too big. And so I'm excited to bring that mindset into the securities world. Another piece that we found is back in 2019, there was a restitution fund that was created by the legislature for the securities department. That fund has never had money put into it. That to me is a big problem. The legislature said, up to $1 million a year shall go into this fund to pay restitution to North Dakota citizens who've been harmed through securities failures or security issues. Going through this process, and at the end of this biennium, we were able to put for the first time a deposit into that fund to say, okay, now we know there may be some cases coming down the road. We're not going to be able to make North Dakotans whole, but we can at least get them something. And again, to have a department that has not, for effectively 5-6 years, just has not set that fund up was a little bit shocking to us. And it's like, well, we've got this tool that you can use that can hopefully help ease the burden, ease the pain from some of these North Dakotans. And if somebody chosen not to do that because it's difficult, or maybe there may be some legislative changes or regulatory changes that need to happen to it, doesn't make sense to us. So I think we're going to see some movement in those spaces. Again, we're hoping to continue the Epic investigation. I'm not able to comment a whole lot on where we're at on it right now. We're still I'm still kind of getting my arms around it. My legal team's getting into it. But again, I think part of the mindset we're bringing to this is we want to be a little more proactive on this than reactive, and try to get in front of this stuff as best we can to prevent these big losses.
So, John, I want to shift gears a little bit to health insurance. And I don't know if listeners know this, but I think you're the current chair of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So you're really at the table in a lot of these discussions. Health insurance and the cost of premiums is a big problem. I'm an employer. Our health insurance rates just went up 10.9%. Obviously work with teachers around the state, and often the increase in appropriations from the state automatically gets just eaten up by health insurance. We've got these big changes in the big bill that got passed, and how that will affect folks on Medicaid, and what does that mean for us on private insurance? How can we, and I'm not even getting into what this means for businesses who provide health insurance. This is just such a huge, huge cost for employers, employees. So, John, fix health insurance, something that we've been trying to do for a long time. But what can we be doing? Because it's not sustainable to
No,
increase health insurance rates 10-15% a year.
you're absolutely right. And I've been talking about this since since the beginning. We're on a track right now that is to your point not sustainable, right? I mean, there is no more to give when you get to health insurance premiums. And the reality is you got to look at, if the thing that you're insuring is increasing in cost, your insurance will go up in cost, right? So that's for everything, right? Whether it's your auto, your home, whatever it is, if that's rising in cost, your premium will go up. Well, on the health insurance side, or the health services and the health provider side and the health insurance side, we're seeing a dramatic increase in the cost of healthcare in this country, and especially in North Dakota. And I'm making the case that, we did a 2019 healthcare cost study in North Dakota, and we were number 1, 2, or 3 in a lot of the areas you don't want to be 1, 2, or 3 in, whether that's per capita cost, admissions, utilization, all these different pieces. And that makes it a challenge. We're one of the few states in the country that have prior approval. So that means every rate that is approved in this state comes across my desk. We take them through a fine-tooth comb. We negotiate with the insurers. And it's a tricky situation because I've got to balance solvency of the company with affordability for the consumer, right? And so we also do a private health insurance study about every other year, every third year. And generally our health insurers in the state are between a -2% to a 2% positive margin, right? So we try to keep them in that window, and we think that's pretty fair. But at the end of the day, you've got health providers coming in and requesting 20% increases in the reimbursement rates from these insurers. And when you've got a fairly, what's becoming a monopolistic system in the state, there's a lot of power there and a lot of weight there that helps, that can control some of this market. The other issue with this is when you look at the health system and the health payment system, you've got a health insurance sector that is highly regulated. I'm in there. I'm in Blue Cross, Sanford's. I'm in Medica's books every quarter, looking at their revenues, looking at what's going on. On the health provider side, there is nothing like that. Really, the only regulation that exists on the hospital side is generally on the building side. So making sure that the oxygen pumps are where they need to be, the buildings are safe. They're able to house patients. But when you get to the financial side of the world, that regulation doesn't exist. And when you've looked at hospitals now that are accepting upwards of 50 to 60% of their revenues coming from a government source, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, that to me seems a little bit out of balance. I'm not a huge, government regulation person, but when you've got this system is a little out of balance, and I don't know how you correct that, because every time we have the conversation at the North Dakota legislature about adjusting some of these healthcare cost issues, the initial reaction is, well, what hospital do you want to close? What rural hospital do you want to close, John? And it's like, well, that's a pretty tough point to start a conversation from. But at the end of the day, we're getting consumers who can no longer afford health insurance. You layer that in, Chad, with what happened in the budget reconciliation bill. I'm really worried about this upcoming open enrollment period. And I spent about the entirety of the month of May in Washington, D.C., advocating for the advanced premium tax credits, for some of the cost sharing measures, a lot of these pieces that ended up still being included in this budget reconciliation bill that are really going to harm consumers. We're going to see pretty significant rate increases across the board, across the country. My concern is you've got a number of folks who have to go out and purchase their own health care, who don't receive it from their employer, who simply will not do that anymore. They'll be priced out of the market. And that leads to problems. And the folks who will maintain that coverage generally are probably your sicker population who don't have a choice. They must buy this coverage because I have to have it. Well, that leads to a little bit of the death spiral is what they call it, where that population is very, very high cost. You don't have the low cost individual to help subsidize that. And then what does that do to the market? That remains to be seen. So now you've got Congress who've gone home over their break and they're getting yelled at by their consumer or by their constituents. I'm hearing now that they're coming back and maybe going to re-look at some of these pieces. It's too late. This open enroll window starts in November. The rates are being filed. We've got federal deadlines that we've got to abide by. And if they look at doing something, changing it in December, well, at that point, I've already gone on Shopped as a consumer, realized the price is too high. I'm not going back in the last 2 weeks of the year to say, oh, well, maybe this time they promise it's going to be better. I think we're in some real trouble here. And then you get to the midterms next year, there's a change. Well, you're looking at a 2-year window before anything can change back. And I don't know, I don't know how this market maintains. And the problem with that I've had the conversation with the healthcare providers, the hospitals, and across the country, is they're advocating for the very thing that they don't want to end up having, which is Medicare for all. We're going to get to a point where the only thing that can save this is the government stepping in and saying, well, we can provide the cost cheaper, which will then dramatically lower reimbursement rates, which will then dramatically impact our care, our coverage and our care, and it'll throw the market into chaos. And so the problem I cannot get both the insurers and the providers to come to the table and have a reasonable conversation about how do we do this? Because again, the providers start with, well, what hospital do you want to close? And we're just saving lives. And the insurers are starting from the point of, we can no longer afford anything else, and there's no more there. And so both sides are at the polls and not really willing to work together, and the consumer loses in that situation. So I don't have a whole lot of good news in this health insurance space. The rates are going up, and unfortunately Congress is taking action that is only going to exacerbate that. And yeah, I'm concerned.
John, one of the problems you said earlier, you're not really a regulation guy, and I agree with you. I think we both probably share in ideology in that front, but I feel like we don't have a choice. So we talk about this being a market, and it's not really a market.
It's not really a free market anymore. I mean, it isn't.
And the thing is I'm not sure the public wants a free market. I mean, you talk about people paying. A free market would be people going out and shopping for health insurance like they shop for auto insurance. But that's not what happens. We are ingrained in our culture that third parties pay for our health insurance, whether it's an employer or whether it's the government. That's just about everybody in the country gets their insurance that way. And so I don't know that we have a choice but for the government to step in. If this is what Americans want, and this is all the momentum is heading in this direction, what other choice do we have? So I guess, I mean, talk to me a little bit about that. If you were able to get into the books for the care providers in the same way that you get in, what would that look like from your perspective? I mean, what do you?
I think we really got to take a look at how we deliver healthcare. And I tried this with Governor Burgum, and I've had the same conversation with Governor Armstrong, and it's a challenge. And I don't fault either one of them on this, but it's, North Dakota is a small enough state where we could be a pilot project. We could probably get the waivers we need to get from Congress to do some unique things, but we need to bring our providers and our insurers together and say, okay, let's start from scratch. If we're going to build a healthcare delivery system, payers and providers included, from scratch, it would look vastly different today than it would years ago when this was originally built. But the problem is nobody wants to come to that table because there's incentive to keep the system as it is right now, right? And I think that incentive probably exists, in my opinion, more so on the provider side at this point, because change would be hard, right? I mean, if you change and evolve how this delivery system happens, that may mean changing how the brick and mortar of a hospital looks like. Maybe it may mean changing a lot of those pieces, and that also would change consumer behavior, which would be a challenge as well. But I don't know how you do it without changing the healthcare delivery system. Because again, we looked at part of our study, we looked at the secret shopper, to your point about transparency. We looked at a colonoscopy, vaginal birth, and C-section at the major communities around our state. There is about a 350% difference between Minot and Fargo for a colonoscopy, right? And some of these elective procedures, like a knee surgery, things like that, we're trying to get to the point where if I could shop as a consumer and say, well, I'm willing to drive to Fargo from Grand Forks to get my knee surgery done, because I can take that hour, I can figure that out to save 200%. I should have that. If I have that knowledge as a consumer, I may be willing to do that, but there's no way for me to get that information, at least in a reasonable format. And so, but every time we try to bring those kind of bills forward, and I'll give Jared Hendricks some credit here. He brought forward some transparency legislation this session that, again, died on the vine because it's a challenge and it's a change within the healthcare delivery system. So there's a lot of uphill forces in this, and again, working on this for 8 years, I'm not sure how we change it.
Well, another question I had, I watched with interest. We're starting to see Sanford, I think, is the big example of of companies being on both sides. Sanford offers health insurance. They obviously also offer health care, and increasingly they're pushing health insurance options that sort of lock the covered into seeking care at their facilities, or at least if you want it to be covered care, or I mean, they're basically, and I understand, how that makes sense to them from a business perspective, but I mean, is that the direction? As a consumer, that gives me pause. I feel like the insurer and the healthcare provider being the same on the same team essentially creates some conflicts of interest.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't, and just be clear, that's not illegal, right? I mean, it's
no,
not
it's
illegal.
not.
It's not. It is. They're fully within the bounds of the law. They're an HMO. That's a business structure that they can choose to set up, and they're a vertically integrated health system. That they're not the first to do this. They won't be the last. But to your point, it drives us more towards a monopolistic system, and I'm not sure I've ever seen a monopoly that's brought down prices, right? And so,
It's
it gives me pause too, but there's not a whole lot that we can do about it other than maybe raise and ask some of those questions and say, hey, is this the direction we want to head? But at the end of the day, again, Sanford has every right to do this, and they are doing it. And again, I don't want to disparage Sanford by any stretch of the imagination, because they do provide a lot of good in the communities. They provide a lot of help and a lot of service to all of our communities.
and I don't want to,
Yeah.
but and I know, because one positive side effect of that is it does drive down premium prime, and they're able to offer cheaper insurance packages because of it.
But the challenge there is then consumers don't always know that they're buying a product that'll only allow them to go to Sanford, clinics or Sanford providers. And
My point was, I'm not trying to pick on Sanford.
Yep.
There's a lot of worrying trends here.
well, and one other piece too, Rob, that's been interesting to us is, and this is one place that Sanford's is actually a fairly good actor, is on the charity care side of the world, right? So it's and part of our study as well, and this is an old study, we're probably never going to be able to update it because we'll never get the authority to do this again. But when you look at charity care, that's often a point that hospitals make. We write off a lot of care. We write off a lot of bad debt care. In North Dakota, on average, our patient revenue, 1.5% of that is for charity care. The national average is about 3%. And so we're below average. And there are some provider systems in the state that basically you can't have more than $600 in your checking account. You can't own a car. You can't have XYZ. And so you basically have to be bankrupt, and then we'll write off your hospital bill, right? That's a challenge. And so some of the ideas we brought forward as well is, okay, these are nonprofit institutions. They don't pay property tax, because the reason they don't pay property tax is because they pay their social good and so community good. Is there a way to say, okay, if they're not meeting that national average, if that delta, that 1.5%, they should write a check to the city then and say, hey, we maybe didn't meet our end of the bargain. We'll write a check to the city and say, here's a check to cover our portion that we didn't cover, to lower that property tax burden for that community. You guys know property tax is a pretty big discussion here in North Dakota. But again, those discussions they don't go anywhere, right? Because again, it always gets back to the hospitals are barely making it. We're barely keeping our doors open. But again, that's just not the that's not the facts that I see. And that's a really hard challenge and a really hard discussion to have with a legislative body in the middle of an 80-day session, when things are moving so quickly. But these are some of the ideas we brought forward that have not been successful. But again, going back to Chad's original point, something has to change. Again, we get the phone calls from consumers. We'll do our rate release like we always do, probably in November when we let kind of the dust settle from Congress. And we're going to outline where the rate increase is coming from. Part of it is Congress's responsibility. Part of it is due to increased costs of health services. We're going to outline those in that release. But we're going to get the same phone calls from the consumers saying, how can I afford XYZ% increase on top of everything else that I'm paying for? And that's a real hard question to answer for us.
So I know we're up against the time. I wanted to get some into auto insurance here as well, but do we have time to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if John has time. So when I told some folks in the office this morning that you were going to be our guest, they asked me to talk to you about auto insurance and the fact that their auto rates are just skyrocketing as well. What role does your office have? I mean, is that
skyrocketing is relative, I guess, but go ahead.
Okay. but going up in a concern. What role does your office have in auto insurance?
Yeah, we review those rates. And so it's our job to analyze and look at those rates. And again, risk for insurance is inherently local. So we look at the market in North Dakota and what's happening with trends in auto accidents and auto claims and all those different pieces. The challenging part in auto right now is, again, you look at the cars that we're driving. A new windshield is $4,000 with all the sensors that exist in there. You got, a bumper is a couple grand now. These are highly sophisticated vehicles that we're driving. And so when any kind of damage, any kind of ding becomes a multi-$1,000 claim very, very quickly. You layer that on top of, again, we're coming off of supply chain issues and some of the inflationary pressures, labor pressures. All that has led to increased costs within the market itself. And so that will reflect back in rate. The biggest thing I can do is encourage folks. We've got an auto market study that we put out every year. It's generally about a year and a half behind. So the data is about a year and a half behind, but it goes through about 8 different scenarios. So like a single driver, married with kids, and it gives you a list of all the companies that are operating in North Dakota and what that premium would be. The biggest thing I hear from consumers is, I've got my insurance agent, and they're telling me my rate's going up 10%, 15%. Well, you need to go shop. And that's an uncomfortable thing for North Dakotans to do at times, because it's like, well, I've got my relationship with my agent. He's a good person. I like them, and I don't want to disappoint them. But the reality is you may be able to save money if you go to somebody else. And again, we have a highly competitive market in North Dakota. And so you've got to go out and shop that market. And the folks who do that, oftentimes they're able to save money actually from what they were paying before. And so that's a challenge, right? Because again, we're all North Dakota nice. We all want to, I've got the relationship. I don't want to leave you high and dry, but at the end of the day, if you're getting a rate you don't want to pay, take a look at the market, see what else is out there.
I can attest for personal experience every couple of years. And I haven't had to change in quite a while. I've got a really good deal. I've never dealt with an agent though. I always just do the websites, but yeah, every couple of years, all those different commercials, right? I go down the list: Liberty Mutual, Geico, Progressive, and
speaking broader on that, Rob, it's, I'm really been challenging the insurance industry as a broader national target this year. Is there is a really negative narrative about the insurance industry nationally, probably even globally, right? I mean, you look at a number of the issues that have happened in the insurance space.
Health insurance executive got gunned down in the street, and a lot of people aren't that sad about it.
Yeah, I know, and that's scary, right? I mean, that is a real scary thing. I was able to deliver an opening session speech last week in Minneapolis. And part of the challenge to the industry is they spend an awful lot of money on jingles, on mascots, on, having khaki pants and all these things. People can remember the jingle. They remember Jake from State Farm, all these things. They remember all those pieces, but they have no idea what the coverage is. They have no idea what the value of these products are, what it's intended to do. And we've got to get back to some of those basics. And it can't be done by government. It can't be done by the regulators, because we don't have that big of a advertising budget, for lack of a better term. And there's responsibility on the insurance industry side to start talking about what they actually provide and what the value of that they provide. Because I firmly believe, again, it's the backstop to our economy. It allows folks to own a home, drive a car, start a business, all these pieces. But if you're only focusing on selling based on humor, based on all these pieces, you're going to lead to a point where you've lost all that public goodwill, and now people are angry. And that's the situation we're finding ourselves in. And that's a scary time to be in. You look at the wildfires in California, hurricanes down south, all these pieces are hitting all at the same time. And there are billions of dollars going out the door in California in paid claims. Homes are being rebuilt, communities are recovering, but that's not the narrative that's coming out of there. And that's a challenge. And our industry has got to do a better job of telling the story of what this industry provides, because there's plenty of people who want to tell that story for them, and it's not a good narrative.
So, John, final question. And as you know, when you come on Plain Talk, you're essentially under oath. So you need to be very honest with this question. Is it true in 2021, during the Special Olympics shootout, and you're a former college basketball player, it's my understanding, but during that Special Olympics shootout, you lost your head-to-head matchup with former Senator Aaron Oban. Is that true or false?
Chad, not to my recollection. I don't
Geez.
recall.
Oh my God. That's essentially pleading the fifth here.
Yeah, I don't recall. I believe we've done fairly well at the Olympic shootout, Special Olympics shootout. The executive branch team generally has done fairly well. I think Superintendent Baszler, I don't want to blame anybody for maybe that loss that year, but I think I carried the weight a lot for that team. I know Senator Oban is a fine athlete and does a great job, but I guess I don't recall the specifics of the scores at that point.
Yeah. I will also say we talked to Governor Armstrong about his shooting form last year.
It's tough.
It's a baseball player and a wrestler's shooting form is what I will say.
It's tough.
After that truly Nixonian answer, we're going to end the interview there. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chad.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back. Just finished up our interview with John Godfread, North Dakota Insurance Commissioner. And he said at one point, John and I share an ideology. We're both conservative Republicans. John worked for the North Dakota Chamber of Commerce. Before that, he's a pro-business guy, not in love with government solutions. But when you're working with insurance, you don't really have a choice. But I want to zoom out for a little bit because I think sometimes, people use the term bureaucracy like it's a dirty word. And I get it. I mean, you have the cliches about standing in line at the post office or the DMV or whatever. Although my last experience at the North Dakota DMV was great. But, we all know the cliches. And we all know that the paperwork at times, the red tape, can be frustrating. But I think sometimes we forget how important to a prosperous, civilized country bureaucracy really is. All the most famous, power, we want to talk about the Romans, the British, the Chinese, the term Mandarin, was at one point was a term sometimes pejorative for a bureaucrat. Really strong, competent, efficient bureaucracies. And Chad, I think one reason why North Dakota has been served well is we have had a lot of very good, very smart people like John Godfread in those relatively low profile positions, but doing hugely consequential work.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Regardless of ideology, regardless of politics, the fact is John Godfread is really, really good at his job, and he's a straight shooter. I mean, I heard him say, hey, Congress took a vote that's going to cause your rates to go up. I mean, that takes guts.
He wasn't sitting around blowing smoke about the big, beautiful bill just because Republicans are all circling the wagons around it. He's saying that at least in his sphere of operations, there's some problems.
And I guarantee John Godfread loves a lot of the stuff that's in that bill. But in this specific area, it is going to cause consumers' rates to go up.
He's not going to pretend like it's not.
Right. And the conversation about health insurance and him talking about, because it's easy for us to reflexively just blame the insurance company. My rates went up 10.9%. Damn it, Blue Cross Blue Shield. But on the other end of that is the healthcare provider who's charging the insurance companies more. And if you're not able to regulate that, I mean, to his point, how do you keep health insurance rates down if the healthcare providers are just allowed to charge what they want, right? I mean, it's a really complicated thing. He didn't seem all that optimistic about the future of health insurance rates in this state unless the providers and the insurance companies get in a room, have a conversation, and try to figure this out. But it's not sustainable for employers. It's not sustainable for the government to continue paying these rates.
And something's got to give. And especially if we're going to continue, and I don't I don't think there's any political appetite at all to move away from it. So if we're going to continue to where, most Americans are getting their insurance from a third party employer or the government, then we're going to have to contemplate government interventions to try to control some of these prices, because the way prices are controlled at the grocery store, right? And I get it, prices go up, but a lot of times that's, genuine market fluctuations. But the way in other, actual free markets, it's consumer choice where, if you charge me too much, at some point I'm going to go get my goods or services from someone else. I can't do that with the insurance industry, really. Not really. I mean, I can't go on the individual market and find a plan as good as the one my employer offers. And the one my employer's offers is pretty good, but the price keeps going up every single year. And the funny thing was like the answer, even when he talked about auto insurance, it was the same thing. Like, well, my auto insurance is going up. Well, it's because the cost of repairing autos is going up. And I think that's a little different. I don't think big auto glass is out there sticking it to people. It's more of a reflection of the type of cars that Americans are.
They're complicated computers we're driving around. It's not just the crank windows and, the easy engine. I mean, everything's more complicated.
You get in a collision now, it's not just straightening out your bumper and stuff anymore. It's also, there's a computer inside that may have been damaged, and now we got to replace that whole thing. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, my windshield, I can look through it and see what the speed limit is, right? Like through the window.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's crazy, but I break my window. I'm assuming it's a lot more complicated to fix my windshield than it was, back in my.
When I got the crack fixed on the windshield of my 1986 Ford F-150.
Right.
It's a different time.
But I think to your conversation with you at the grocery store, I know exactly what my milk costs, and I can go somewhere else and get milk. I go and get an MRI. I have no idea what they're charging my health insurance company, right? Maybe they tell me, right? Maybe they ask, but it's not like I can go to Sanford and then go across to CHI and say, hey, which one's cheaper for my MRI?
I wish we could have spent more time on it, but his comment about the secret shopper, where it costs like 300% more.
Yes, for a colonoscopy.
Not compared to Fargo. It's somebody who's aging into the realm where I'm going to have to be getting those on the regular. That's kind of because I wouldn't think to shop around for my colonoscopy. I would just talk to my doctor and we'd schedule to go in, and I wouldn't even think twice about the price. And that's a problem. Also, what is justifying that? Are colonoscopies rare in Minot? I mean,
maybe
4 hours. We're 4 hours away from Fargo. It's like we're living in a different market for colonoscopies in Minot than it is for Fargo. I don't know.
But again, consumers have no idea. And I think that's the one thing that John does a good job of, is he keeps some perspective on the consumers in this whole thing, right? It's not just, and I agree that the healthcare provider, the insurance companies don't have that much incentive because they're doing just fine. The system is working for them right now. I thought his comments about closing rural hospitals was interesting. I'm somebody who's talked about closing rural hospitals before. I'd like to look at their books to see maybe I should change my talking points if the rural hospitals are doing just fine.
Part of the problem is we don't know. And John probably knows better than we do. And right. I trust John. He's got a great track record. So that's very interesting. That colonoscopy, I thought you were going to make a joke about there being bigger a-holes in Minot or something like that.
Well, sorry, that one was in my head, but decided not to do it. Because I'm sure there's some nice people in Minot.
There's some. His comments about obviously he couldn't tell us a lot about what's going on with ethics. I didn't expect it. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. He doesn't have any business.
Did you say with ethics or with epic?
Epic.
Okay.
Did
I hear ethics all the time now when we do these podcasts.
Epic companies. But I thought it was interesting what he said about the restitution fund, where we created it and then it sat dormant for, what do you say, 4 or 5 years, and we didn't put any money into it. We didn't do anything with it, and kind of put that on the old leadership at Securities, like they didn't do anything with it. And again, that's another consumer protection thing. We create a fund like that. It's supposed to be a safety net. If somebody ends up getting hurt through some sort of securities fraud or some other untoward dealing, the state of North Dakota provides a safety net. Can't make everybody whole, but we can mitigate some of the pain. That's not a bad thing. Why wasn't that being taken care of?
Especially when the legislature, according to him, said they shall put $1 million into this fund. It wasn't optional. I also thought that whole conversation and the way he sort of framed why the Securities Commission is part of it makes a heck of a lot of sense. I think there was some ugliness that probably got us to this point, particularly with the previous Securities Commissioner and some interpersonal communications. But I think this is the right move. I think this gets us to a good place and makes us more efficient, and I think we can all get behind that.
And again, it gets back to my comment about, and even Democrats. I mean, this is a uniquely conservative thing when people, say, "Oh, bureaucracy, oh, red tape, bureaucrats, et cetera, et cetera." There is a right way. There is a competent way. A good bureaucrat is a wonderful, wonderful public servant. And so somebody like John Godfread, who's he wanted to consolidate those departments because there's redundancies. I even when you get down to like administrative staff, like maybe there's one administrative position, there's an administrative position in the securities department and the insurance department. Maybe one person could do both those jobs. There's legal counsel. Maybe you don't need so many lawyers. You can have a smaller pool of lawyers providing legal counsel for all of it. Even just the office space. That's a good thing. So, in a way, like he's telling us, we're going to do more with less. That's
the conversation about we've got this 5th floor at the Capitol. Why are we leasing 2 other office spaces around town? Bring them all in like he did, make things more efficient. And, when I hear bureaucrat, I don't necessarily think about the elected official at the head of it. John was very good about talking about the autonomy he gives his team because he's not an expert in every one of these things, nor is any statewide elected official an expert in everything that they're working on. So it seems to me the insurance department is doing good work. We've had good insurance commissioners historically. And hopefully they can figure out health insurance. I also think him having that national perspective as the chair of the national insurance is a big deal for North Dakota. He can bring the rural perspective to a national conversation. That's a big deal for us.
We have some unique challenges. Not the least is, rural hospitals. And even with the rural hospitals, there's a lot of North Dakotans who live a long way from the nearest clinic or the nearest hospital. And that complicates things, but I really want to praise. There's a lot of people. Some of them are elected officials. Some of them, I call them a bureaucrat. And again, I'm not using that term.
Negatively.
But they're administrators and we elect them. We can have an argument. Maybe we elect too many people in North Dakota. That's probably a topic for another podcast, but North Dakota, I think, has really been served well. We have had a lot of really good people in these, I don't know what you want to call them, second tier, that are vitally important, but it's not very sexy work.
No. Well, and I just think about who wants to be insurance commissioner. I remember talking to John when he was first running, and I was like, why? And he explained why. This interview shows why. Yeah. He's dug into some really, really important things here, and is a national expert on it.
Really matters. I always enjoy when we have Godfread on. I like it when we have Tom Beadle on. Thomas Beadle, the treasurer. Brian Croshus at tax department. These are people that are doing really, really good work and really helping the state of North Dakota run smoothly.
Yeah. Michael Howe, Secretary of State's office. Fantastic.
Yeah. Another great example. What do you think, like with the big, beautiful bill and some of these things coming down? Like you said, John said I'm just looking at my notes here. He said, I'm really worried about the upcoming open enrollment period. You hear somebody like that, for somebody who's not prone to hyperbole.
Yeah.
That's really troubling.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. If what you end up having is pricing out a bunch of young, healthy people out of the insurance market, that leads to a bunch of not young, less healthy people being the majority, a bigger share of it. That increases all of our rates, and that's concerning.
That was one of the things with Obamacare is we created, the what do you want to call it? The marketplace and some things. But one of the linchpins of that was the mandate.
Yep.
People had to be insured, but the mandate's no more. Got struck down. So now we're operating without it. Now I didn't support the mandate because I think if we're down to the point where we're having to force people to buy insurance,
Yeah.
There's a problem with the insurance market that we need to fix. I would rather make it so that people want to buy insurance because it's a useful service for them.
Right.
And, if we're down to the point there's that. But I mean, I think that's really it. I mean, we tried to solve this problem by forcing people to buy insurance. I mean, increasingly, insurance doesn't look like a good deal to people.
Right.
And that's a terrible, terrible problem. How did we get there? I mean, I think of all the things that I buy because I subscribe to Netflix because it's a good deal. My family watches it a lot. It's a good bang for our buck for entertainment. Insurance needs to be that way, but instead, we have a guy who murdered an insurance executive and now he's a folk hero. That's where Americans are right now about the insurance industry.
Yeah. I mean, the fundamental problem here is,
by the way, I want to make it clear. I don't think what he did was right. He's not a folk hero to me.
No, no. It makes me so uncomfortable when people praise the fact that United Healthcare exec
pointing out the fact that it's going on, like it or
Right.
not, the guy's a folk hero.
So I think the biggest fundamental problem we have here is there's a lot of 25-year-olds who don't think they're going to get sick or get in a car accident, or maybe they can't afford. But the reality is if that 25, 26, 27-year-old gets in a car accident, they're still getting coverage, right? And
They're getting care.
They're getting care. Yeah, they're going to get care.
And then that care gets subsidized. Hopefully they can pay their bills, but if they can't pay their bills, the care was still provided. So the rest of us had to pick up the tab,
Right.
doctors and the medicines. And meanwhile, they're saddled with not only perhaps a life-changing illness or injury, but also life-changing debt.
And so it's like this changing people's mentality to not feel like they're inevitable, right? And that's really hard to do. I know it's been a while for me, but I remember being in my early 20s. I mean, I did some stupid stuff. I had health insurance because of my mom and dad. But if it were up to me to buy my own health insurance when I was 23, 24 years old, would I have done it? I don't know. Because I wasn't going to a regular, checkup. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But there's a lot of folks that end up that's why the mandate was so important, right? That force them into the pool. But we have to figure this out because here we are again, right? I mean, and I would suggest, John said we're on our path to Medicare for all. Maybe that's what we need to do, because I don't know how people are used to our system. You wouldn't have this system if you're starting from scratch. This would not be the system we'd have, but I don't know that we can just throw it all up in the air.
Well, again, even if we could, I feel like we could. I feel like the political will is not there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We could, but nobody.
I mean, it's like we're not leaving. Even people who would say that they're opposed to universal health care are also voting in a way that's going to leave us with no other choice. We're not going to have any other choice than to just nationalize it and then deliver it and pay for it as taxpayers, because the alternative is just absolute collapse of because it's not sustainable. All right, we're gonna end it there. Such a fascinating discussion with Commissioner John Godfread. So thankful he came on. Hey, leave us a voicemail or text 701-587-3141. You can do that anytime, night or day. You're listening to this. If you send it in, we may play it, read it on the air. Also follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X at Plain Talk ND is our handle on all of them. Always fun watching the discussions there. Doing some new fun stuff with our YouTube too, where we're pulling out the video interviews so you can watch just the interview on its own, full video. Check that out if you want to. And as always, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. the hand holding, it don't need it anymore. It's just hard, man. It's anyway. Before I start crying, I'm going to introduce our guest,